When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. But now we're buying oil from Venezuela, so we're making a dictator very rich.
They stole our oil. That's what President Trump said at his Mar-a-Lago press conference on January 3rd, hours after American forces captured Nicolás Maduro. He called it one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Our oil. American property. Here's the thing. Venezuelan oil was never American. Venezuela has been an independent country since 1821. They nationalized their oil industry in 1976, 50 years ago, long before Hugo Chavez, long before Maduro.
No me ha colocado como presidente el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, que no estoy subordinado a ningún gobierno extranjero imperialista.
So what is Trump actually talking about, and why does this matter? Because if you understand the oil story, you understand everything about why this operation really happened, and it's not the story the administration is telling you. Let's follow the money. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, 303 billion barrels. That's more than Saudi Arabia, more than Iraq, more than Russia and the United States combined. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Venezuela holds about 17% of the world's total oil reserves. If that oil were worth $70 a barrel, a conservative estimate, we're talking about $21 trillion sitting under Venezuelan soil. 21 trillion with a T. But here's what you need to understand. Having oil in the ground isn't the same as being able to sell it. Venezuela's oil is some of the heaviest, dirtiest crude on Earth. It requires special refineries to process, it's more expensive to extract, and the infrastructure to get it out of the ground, it's in ruins. Under Chavez and Maduro, Venezuela's oil production collapsed from 3.5 million barrels per day in the late 1990s to just over 1 million today. That's a 70% decline. The oil is there. The ability to get it? Not so much. So what's this theft Trump is talking about? In 2007, Hugo Chavez nationalized Venezuela's oil industry. He forced foreign companies to either accept new terms, giving the state majority control, or leave. ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips refused. They pulled out. Their assets were seized. Both companies went to international arbitration courts. The courts ordered Venezuela to pay. ConocoPhillips is owed over $10 billion. Exxon is owed around $2 billion. Venezuela has paid almost none of it. That's the theft, and it's a legitimate grievance. Those companies invested billions, and Venezuela took their stuff. But let's be clear about what this is and isn't. This isn't America's oil being stolen. These were private companies making private investments who got burned when a government changed the rules. It happens all over the world. It's a business risk. And here's the irony. The one American oil company that stayed in Venezuela? Chevron. They accepted Chavez's terms. They're still there today, pumping oil. So when Trump says they stole our oil, he's talking about debts owed to Exxon and Conoco, companies that left almost 20 years ago. On January 9th, Trump invited the CEOs of America's biggest oil companies to the White House. Exxon, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Shell, the biggest players in the world. Trump made big promises. He said American and European oil companies would spend at least $100 billion to very rapidly rebuild Venezuela's oil industry. He said they could have it up and running in less than 18 months. And then the executives started talking. Darren Woods, the CEO of ExxonMobil, had a different assessment. His exact words, "Today, Venezuela is uninvestable." Uninvestable from the CEO of the world's largest oil company. Woods explained that before Exxon would put money into Venezuela, there would need to be significant changes to commercial frameworks, legal systems, and durable investment protections. He said he could send a technical team to assess the situation in less than 2 weeks, but that's not the same as committing billions of dollars. ConocoPhillips CEO Ryan Lance was equally cautious. He said major reforms would be required before his company would return. So Trump is promising $100 billion in investment. The oil executives are saying, not so fast. Here's what the actual experts say it would cost to bring Venezuela's oil production back to its glory days. Rystad Energy, a respected consulting firm, ran the numbers. To return Venezuela to 3 million barrels per day, where it was in the late 1990s, would cost approximately $183 billion in total investment over the next 15 years. Not 18 months, 15 years. Even just to keep production flat at its current 1.1 million barrels per day would require $53 billion over the same period. And that's assuming everything goes smoothly, that there's political stability, that contracts are honored, that the security situation doesn't deteriorate. Remember what happened in Iraq? The U.S. invaded in 2003, and it took nearly 2 decades to get Iraqi oil production back to pre-war levels. And that was with massive American military presence and trillions of dollars in spending. Venezuela has more oil than Iraq, but it also has heavier crude, worse infrastructure, and, right now, no clear government in charge. Let's listen to what Darren Woods actually said, because it's important. Today, it's uninvestable. Significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections. He also reminded everyone that Exxon has been expropriated from Venezuela 2 different times. They're not eager to get burned again. Industry analyst Dan Pickering put it bluntly. The interest is high, the willingness is unclear. And here's something else the oil executives know. Venezuelan oil would be competition. More oil on the global market means lower prices. Lower prices mean lower profits for everyone. One CNN source in the industry said companies see Venezuelan oil as competition that would lower oil prices and profits. They're not exactly racing to make that happen. So we have a situation where Trump is promising a Venezuelan oil bonanza, and the companies he needs to deliver it are politely saying, "We'll see." And now we get to the really strange part. On January 10th, Trump signed an executive order that blocks courts from seizing Venezuelan oil revenue held in U.S. Treasury accounts. The order declares those funds are held solely for sovereign purposes and can't be touched by private claims. Remember those billions that Exxon and ConocoPhillips are owed from the 2007 nationalization? They've been trying to collect through international courts for almost 20 years. Trump just made it harder. His order says any attempt to seize Venezuelan oil funds will interfere with efforts to ensure economic and political stability in Venezuela. So let me get this straight. Trump invaded Venezuela partly because, he says, they stole American oil company assets. But now he's protecting Venezuelan money from those same companies trying to collect what they're owed. The companies that lost billions when Chavez nationalized their assets are now being told to wait longer by the president who claimed to be avenging them. Who exactly is this benefiting? There's one more piece to the oil puzzle that explains a lot. Cuba. Venezuela has been subsidizing Cuba with cheap oil for decades. It's the lifeline that keeps the Castro regime running. In 2024, Cuba imported about 27,000 barrels per day from Venezuela, down from previous years, but still critical. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, whose parents fled Cuba, has made no secret of his desire to see Cuba's communist government fall. He told reporters, "If I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned." Trump said Cuba is ready to fall because they got all their income from Venezuela. So maybe this isn't just about getting Venezuelan oil for American companies. Maybe it's about cutting off Venezuelan oil from Cuba. Analysts at the Houston Chronicle reported that one of the Trump administration's likely motives is choking off Cuba's energy supply. Rubio even admitted as much back in 2019 when he said a weakened Cuba would be a welcome byproduct of regime change in Venezuela. The oil isn't just a resource, it's a weapon. Let's add this up. Trump says American oil was stolen, but Venezuelan oil was never American. It was nationalized 50 years ago. Trump says oil companies will invest $100 billion. But the CEOs say Venezuela is uninvestable without major reforms. Trump says production will be up in 18 months, but experts say it will take 15 years and $183 billion. Trump signed an order protecting Venezuelan funds from Exxon and Conoco, the same companies he claims were victims of theft. So who actually benefits from this operation? Oil services companies like Halliburton and SLB saw their stock prices jump 10% after the invasion. Chevron, the only major American oil company still operating in Venezuela, is positioned to expand. The Venezuelan people? Their country is still in chaos. Their democratically elected opposition was sidelined. Maduro's regime, minus Maduro, is still in charge. American taxpayers? Unknown. Trump suggested the government might reimburse oil companies for rebuilding costs. That's your money. This isn't about stolen oil. It's about who gets to control the next chapter of Venezuela's oil story. And so far, it's not the Venezuelan people. At his Mar-a-Lago press conference, Trump said something revealing. He said, "We're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground, and that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela. It goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement." Reimbursement? For what? For an invasion that Venezuela didn't ask for, to install a government Venezuela didn't elect, to extract oil that was never ours to begin with. The last time America tried to rebuild a country's oil industry after regime change was Iraq. 20 years, trillions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, and the oil still flows mostly to China. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe Trump knows something the oil executives don't. Maybe $183 billion will magically appear. Maybe 15 years will compress into 18 months. Or maybe this is what it looks like when someone tells you they're fighting for democracy and freedom, but the receipts show something else entirely. 303 billion barrels of oil. That's the real reason we're talking about Venezuela today. Everything else is just the story they tell you while they're taking it.